On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks get a home game against the Lakers on Christmas. Does it matter? Is it saying anything about the Mavericks that they get a home game on Christmas? Plus, the Mavericks signed 2 guys for their training camp. We'll talk about McKinley, Wright, and Gueye. Talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good! And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where the best way you can help us grow this show is to comment your team every day below. Also, let us know, do you care that the Mavericks play a home game on Christmas Day against the Lakers? Do any of those things matter? Home, Christmas Day, against the Lakers? Let us know. Joining me today on the show, longtime friend of the show. You know him probably from Twitter, just from takes and from grumpy opinions, self-proclaimed grumpy opinions. What you got for me, Kirk Serious Face?
And we are in the depths of a real off season, and I'm starting not to know what to do with my hands.
Well, that's okay. On YouTube, I shrunk our screen so much that now we don't have to show our hands at all. So, all right, let's get into today's topic. We got a couple of things to get to today. Obviously, the Mavericks are going to play on Christmas Day, and we're going to play Factor Cap. Does it matter? Does it not matter? What of this matters? And then we'll talk about the Mavericks signing a couple of two-way guys, or a couple of guys to the training camp. McKinley, Wright the fourth, and Gueye, Mouhamadou Gueye. Everybody calls him Mo, though. Every single highlight I watched like 25 minutes of highlights, and they were all said Mo. Nobody wanted to go for the first name there. And then Betonline also released the over-under win totals and all that. So we'll talk about that with Kirk today. Kirk's from Mavs Moneyball. You know him. He's Kirk Henderson is his real name. Kirk Serious Face on Twitter is where most people probably know him. You can follow him there. And then, all good stuff running Mavs Moneyball all the time. And you keep finding good people that I keep bringing on the show. So I said, well, we might as well have Kirk on too.
Yeah, that's true. I do love our staff because it's always fun to have people who you don't agree with, because therefore you can always find stuff to write and argue about. And I will say my favorite, I'm not sure if you've had him on yet. He's not written in a while because he's been busy, but Xavier Santos is just the yes, most intensely opinionated gambling person. And what's worse is he's been right on a few big things, and he just like trots that out because he wanted Spencer Dinwiddie forever ago. And he's like, look, I was right. You know, it's fun. The Mavs opinion community is certainly varied.
And the murderer's row of people that have come through Mavs Moneyball, they just continue to keep finding them. There's Jonathan Starks and Jason Gallagher and myself and Dalton Trigg. Lots of good people. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into this. So the Mavericks, according to Shams Charania, Mark Stein, many others, are going to be playing a game on Christmas Day. They played last year on Christmas Day, and now they're playing a home game against the Lakers. Factor Cap, Kirk Henderson. Having a game on Christmas Day matters.
Fact, because it's the league's showcase. They're probably not thrilled that the NFL is imposing on them to a degree, but this is the day that they want to highlight all of their stars and rising teams. And the fact that the Mavericks are playing is this their third straight Christmas game or fourth?
Is a great question to ask me right now.
I know. So they played the first game. It was the second game of the season following the bubble season. And that's the first one I remember. Luka wasn't in great shape. It was also a Lakers game. Wasn't great. Last year, they played a Christmas Day game, but Luka was out, and they played the Jazz, and that was a sign of things to come. Jalen Brunson had a really nice game. Porzingis didn't do great. And now we're looking at this one, and for me, it's fascinating for two reasons. The home aspect is just really telling. You know, LeBron James is not thrilled to be playing an away game on Christmas. He's probably played a Christmas Day game for at least 16 or 17 of his 35 seasons in the league. I don't, and now he's having to go somewhere with his and probably tote his whole family along. That part is fascinating to me. But the other part that I'm really interested in, and I want to hear your take on this, is actually seeing a Luka that by that point in the year is going to be as fine-tuned as he'll ever have been for a Christmas Day game.
Yeah, because if you look back at some of those past Christmas Day games, and it is the third in a row for the Mavericks. That 2021 season, Christmas Day was the second game of the season. Like we can keep forgetting that these seasons have been just completely weird over the last couple of years. But that was the second game, and then last year where Luka didn't play, and so this will be the best so far that Luka will hopefully look. And he's always motivated to play against LeBron James. Always. Like, it's every single time they play the Lakers. And I think even sometimes when LeBron's not playing, it seems like he's really motivated to beat them, to win, and to play well. And so my next question was going to be Factor Cap playing at home on Christmas Day matters. And I completely agree. It's a total fact that playing at home the Lakers were going to get a Christmas Day no matter what. They just always do, right? And the Knicks got one. The Knicks also got one. The slate, by the way, Bucks at Celtics, Sixers at Knicks, Suns at Nuggets, Lakers at Mavericks, Grizzlies at Warriors. Not sure if that's the time slot schedule that it's in.
I have heard, pure rumor, I have heard that the Mavericks get the middle of the pack slot. That one, I think it's at 2:30 Eastern, is it? Maybe it's 3:30 Eastern. It's the one right in the middle, though, which is interesting because I find, over the years that morning game is usually a tire fire because no one wants to be awake playing basketball on Christmas Day. And then the second game is like the game that they don't know where to slot it. And then the third game's okay. And then the fourth and fifth games are usually where they look like real NBA basketball with Denver somehow always getting the 10:30 p.m. slot game.
And for me, and for probably you listening, it's like, well, that 2:30 game is usually like the best one because at that point, everybody is just done doing Christmas and everybody's off doing their own thing. Either like using the things that they got for Christmas, or we've eaten and so now we're just done and we're just hanging out. Like, at that point, it feels like a good time for a Mavs game.
I've referred to it. My wife doesn't know that it's happened yet because we just got back from vacation, so I haven't told her that this game's on Christmas. And it's going to be are you serious with this day game? It's Christmas. You're with your family. And I'm going to be like, but Luka and the Mavericks we're all family. She's not going to like that.
It's the only time I ever dropped actually, this is a lie. This is a complete lie. It's not the only time, but one of the times I really dropped it's my job. I have to do this. I have to watch this game. It's my job. I have to watch Bucks Celtics because it's my job. But playing at home for the Mavericks matters. Like, that shows some gravitas, that shows some pull the Mavericks have, that Luka obviously brings them, that they were a Western Conference finalist team last year. They were one of the 4 teams remaining, and I think somebody said all the final 8 teams made it or got a Christmas Day game, and that's telling, except for the Miami Heat, I guess. The only team that didn't get one, but that's telling. And to pull the Lakers all the way to Dallas to play that game, it's going to be huge, and it may upset some traveling plans because I don't know if I can travel and not go to that game because it means an awful lot to me, those two teams. But yeah, I think it does mean a lot. And let's just end this topic on this. Factor Cap: the Mavs will beat the Lakers on Christmas Day.
Fact.
Ooh, not high on the Lakers or feeling good about where the Mavs are?
A little bit of both. I think what you said earlier is the most important element, where Luka gets up to play against LeBron like he does Giannis and some of the other superstars who he just loves going against. It was the 2019-20 game, I'm pretty sure, where Luka had just an incredible step back over LeBron that was close to like a game that's on all the classic highlight films. It's just, and Luka hasn't looked great as he's played LeBron, kind of these past 2 seasons for various reasons, and I think this one is going to be big. I just have a feeling.
What was the one where he blocked LeBron? That was the one. Was that rookie year?
Oh, gosh. That one was funny because it's like everyone was surprised Luka got up that high.
I know.
What's that? Yeah, that's a good one.
And then there's always the Seth Curry, Dwight Howard game that will just always live in my
jersey pull. Harrison Fagan. My boss, Harrison Fagan, former Silver Screen and Roll managing editor, sends me that photo just sporadically. No reason. It'll just, drives me nuts.
That's a very Harrison thing to do. Incredible. All right, coming up, let's talk about the Mavs over-under for their win total. Betonline came out with a bunch of different over-unders for a bunch of different teams. There's a couple teams they didn't come out with over-unders for that I think are interesting too, but we'll talk about that when it comes to the Mavericks. There are currently 6 teams in the West with a higher win total over under than the Mavericks. We'll talk about that with Kirk Henderson coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Built Bar. It's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They're absolutely delicious. They're great. I love them. And right now there's a brand new flavor. There always is. You have to check the website like every 2 weeks or so. Pina Colada, 150 calories, 17 grams of protein, 8 grams of sugar, covered in 100% chocolate with the marshmallow. This is the puffs, so you have the marshmallow filling in the middle of it. I buy these myself. Built Bar sends them to me. I get to taste the flavor, and then I'm like, all right, I just want this, and then I just buy them for myself. You can too. Use the promo code. I think they just changed it. It's locked on. It's locked on 15 right now. They just changed the promo code, so go check it out. Use promo code locked on 15 to get 15% off your entire order with built.com. All right, Kirk, we're getting into, we're in the dead of offseason right now, but we're getting into the Mavericks over-unders, which means the season is creeping back in, right? The over-unders come out. That's like one of the first steps into the next season. And right now, the Mavericks over-under is 47.5 wins. So that means, if you're looking at that number, it means that if you want to bet on this, you bet the over, so they're going to get 48 or more wins, and you bet the under, they're going to get 47 or less wins. And Mavericks had 52 wins last year, and if you're listening, you're probably like, wait, that number is so low. Why is that number lower than it was last year? They think Jalen Brunson's worth that much. Well, a lot of these numbers, they trend a little bit lower. Like Phoenix's number is 52.5. The Clippers are 52.5. The Warriors are 52. Like they're not, and nobody's up there at 60 wins, 55 wins, anything like that. Actually, 53 Milwaukee is the highest one that they do. So it trends a little bit lower. But factor cap, Kirk Henderson, 47.5 is not enough wins for the over-under.
Gosh, that one's so hard because I think just to play the game, the answer has to be fact. But to me, I tie those. I would tie any sort of Mavericks related over-under bet directly to whether you think Luka Doncic is going to be MVP because he's currently the odds-on favorite to win the MVP. It's because a lot of people want to vote for Luka. A lot of people want to bet on Luka, overseas markets, everywhere. But it's a pretty simple fact. If you either think Luka's going to lead them to 55 games, which kind of, assumes sort of top 3, top 4 in the West, and therefore you bet the over 2. That's just sort of how I see it at the moment. Locked On Nuggets guy, Matt Moore, an Action Network guy, has sort of walked me through this a time or two because some of these odds get really confusing. At least for me, I'm still learning a lot about gambling. People who are good at it are amazing, but it's just so tough because if you think that the Mavericks are going to lose fewer games, it kind of has to do whether you think they're more the team that played January 1st on, where I'm pretty sure they went 35-12 versus the team that started the season like 16 and 18. So it's like, do you think the team played 500 ball, or do you think the team that played 75% ball? Like I don't know. I don't think Brunson's worth 5 games, but I do think that anywhere near that win total, you're assuming 70 games from Luka Doncic.
So I think it's fact. I think it's cap. It's enough wins as an over under. But you have to think about it as an over under, like you said. Mm-hmm. If someone came up to you and said, "I bet," or I'm gonna guess and predict the Mavs win 47 wins, then I'm like, no, that's not enough, right? Like to just do it like that. But as a betting mechanism, I think it's enough as an over under, and I get it. I think there's some teams that are too high that are higher than the Mavericks, but I think that number is probably just fine. If you think that some players regress shooting a little bit, right? Luka doesn't play enough. I think that number is fine. But if you just predicted and said, "Hey, I think the Mavs are going to 48 games," I would tell you that's not enough.
Yeah, it's so tough for me because the 50 win mark, we as Mavericks fans are sort of spoiled by that, particularly if you're a fan from the Dirk era, because they just won 50 games all the time. And it's a hard mark to get to. And I understand the fans who are saying, if you have Luka Doncic, there's a floor, and that floor is probably 50 games. I've had that said to me. I'm like, I get it, but you're banking an awful lot on Luka being healthy, which it's a risky element to take when you're gambling. That's not to say the Mavericks are bad, anything like that. It's just a gambling opinion.
Yeah, and so some people will see that number and say, "Oh, that's so disrespectful," and I don't necessarily think that it is. And you're right; they had 11 seasons in a row from 2001 to 2011. They had 50 wins, and then they had it in 2015, and then just last year. So I mean, that is more often than not over the course of this century. They have had 50 wins than not.
It's also literally designed to get anyone willing to gamble to bet on it. So if you're looking at that and saying, "Oh, this is a clear over," at that, I don't know. To me, it's a little bit of a stay away. I have placed. I don't really gamble, but I placed $10 on a Luka MVP vote when I was in Vegas, along with a Zion Williamson MVP bet of $10 because Luka's I think was plus 500 and Zion was plus 6,600.
Yeah.
So. What could happen?
The other day I saw like a plus 100,000 on Betonline, and I was like, if I just put $10 on that, and somehow that happens, I'm winning 10,000.
That's right.
All right, there's a couple of so here are the teams that have higher over under. So again, the over under is the number that you have to bet either over or under that team will hit. In the West, Phoenix 52.5, Clippers 52.5. Those are the top two teams in the West. The Warriors 52, Nuggets 50.5, Memphis 49.5, and then Minnesota 48.5. Factor cap, all these teams will finish higher in the standings than the Mavericks.
I'm going to get excoriated if I say anything other than cap, but I don't know. I think it's all health dependent for those teams because it's like the Wolves one makes me mad, but I think they're going to be a maddening juggernaut of a regular season team if they figure anything out. They're just going to be so annoying to play against on a night in, night out basis. I think you can scheme them off the floor in the playoffs, but I don't know. Those are some good lines.
And a problem with a team like Minnesota is that they just have more people to rely on. Cat is out some games, then all of a sudden, like Anthony Edwards gets 20 shots a game. But if he's not, then he gets less than that. Or D'Angelo Russell can step up on any given night and give him something. And they lost some depth with that trade, but the Rudy Gobert piece of it is just such a huge thing. And I think it'll be rocky starting out, but is it rocky for 5 games, 10 games, 25 games? Like that's what really is going to matter. And then all of a sudden, they'll probably just go on a tear eventually because that's just a lot of talent on one team. Maybe Chris Finch can't figure it out and how to put them all together, and maybe the Cat Gobert lineup is not as good, but they cover each other's weaknesses so bad. Like, did you ever go to church camp where they taught you about holding hands with people?
Oh yeah, that's a great comp.
Where you talked about like you put your fingers over in between people's knuckles so that you're covering each other's weaknesses, and the knuckles are the strength. We need Jason Gallagher to come back with Pastor. Oh my gosh. I saw a TikTok today that I've seen a couple of them recently where it's like 2000s youth group trends, and like the first couple ones didn't really hit me because they were too early, and then he did part 3 and I was like, damn, it was like I hit every single one of them.
It's neat. Like social media is best when it's at niche comedy where it's hitting you very specifically.
It had like 100,000 likes, and I was like, oh, this is hitting way more people than just me. But yeah, Memphis is the sneaky one in this. Again, it's Suns, Clippers, Warriors, Nuggets. I feel good about all those teams. They'll probably finish higher than the Mavs. The Warriors and Clippers are kind of weird in there because they have weird injuries, but Warriors had weird injuries last year and had more wins. But Memphis is the one that I kind of feel a little bit like the Mavericks can finish with a better record than them because they're missing Jaren Jackson Jr. They lost Melton and Kyle Anderson, and they only replaced them with rookies. And so I'm curious to see how that works. Are they as good if Ja misses time again?
I didn't understand this. I had the head of the Grizzly Bear Blues, which is SB Nation's Memphis blog on my show.
The current one or the former one?
A current one.
The current one is
Parker Fleming. And he seemed sort of bullish on Jaren Jackson returning earlier, whereas you and I have seen tall people with knee injuries, and there's no rhyme or reason for what happens in these timetables. And so I thought the bullishness was interesting because it wasn't necessarily a homer pick. He's just, from what I've understood, kind of take that, this might not be a half the season type thing because it's just knee injuries for a guy that's that big and that mobile. It's important to his game. And
it's had injuries in the past.
Mm-hmm. And with respect to John Morant, the Grizzlies won more. I'm pretty sure this is the fact. Correct me if you know that I'm wrong. The Grizzlies won more games in one season without Ja Morant than the Cavaliers won without LeBron James during his entire first run with the Cavs when he didn't play.
It was a wild year last year for them.
Yeah. So it's just like, I think they're capable of certain things, but it's, so much about basketball is about getting on a rhythm and playing the right way for the right stretch of time and not having injury luck. And so you're right. They're probably the pick that I would take to fall below the Mavs. I don't have confidence in them. And maybe that's me being a jerk. I don't know. I don't really take the Mavericks so thoroughly bully the Grizzlies that I don't take them seriously as a team. Yeah.
When your star player beats another team off of a shot where he's like perpendicular to or parallel to the ground and he's shooting that, it's, you're allowed to call them out, and you finished farther in the playoffs than them last year. So
that's right.
All those Memphis Grizzlies fans in my mentions. All right, coming up, let's talk about the two guys the Mavericks signed because McKinley, Wright IV, and Gueye, I think are kind of interesting. They're training camp guys. They're coming in, and I asked our Locked On Pit guy about Gueye, and he gave me a whole lot, and I'm really interested in him. So let's talk about those guys coming up. All right, Kirk, the Mavericks and. This always gets me. I have Shams on notifications on Twitter, so whenever Shams tweets out, I get a notification right on my phone, and you just only see the first sentence and a half, and it's like the Dallas Mavericks signed, and I was like, oh, and then it was like McKinley Wright IV and Mouhamadou Gueye, or Gueye as everybody calls him, and I'm interested in these two guys. They're coming in as training camp guys, so they're not signed to a regular deal just yet. The Mavericks only have one roster spot left, so that's why they can sign both of these guys. But before I even dive into who they are, do you think these guys, Factor Cap, are they actually fighting for a roster spot in training camp?
I'd say yeah. I'd say that's fact because Frank Ntilikina came into camp last year under a camp deal and ended up signing with the team. 5 years of NBA experience under his belt. Okay, yeah. But I never want to write anybody off because I have a tendency to do that. So at the moment, I just want to say I see no reason for why not. I mean, it seems extremely unlikely. Usually these camp deals are a combination of favor or a pathway to maybe get them on the developmental or the G League team. Yeah. So that seems the most realistic outcome. But you know what? Why not? Why not? Let's be hopeful. There's nothing to talk about.
And they still have a two-way spot open as well. So this is
okay. That's right, because Moses Wright signed in China.
Wright is gone, and Tyler Dorsey is the other guy in the two-way spot. So they still have a two-way spot open. So I think they could be fighting for one of those. I don't see them fighting for a roster spot. And I love Isaac and I always, every time one of these things happen, and like somebody gets signed and they're like, and they're, Shams writes in the tweet, like they're fighting for a roster spot. Like, oh, the Mavericks probably just did an agent a solid at a certain point and said, hey, let's bring in these two guys. Maybe not because they're bringing in those two guys, but to tell Shams that they are fighting for a roster spot. Like that does an agent a solid a little bit.
Yep.
But with these two guys, I am interested in them. McKinley Wright IV is about almost 24 years old. So he's a little bit older. He played 4 years at Colorado. He was a two-way with Minnesota Timberwolves last year. He played just 5 games with the Timberwolves. He played 9 games with their G League team. So he kind of just hung out with the Timberwolves for a long time. He's a pretty solid playmaker. He's undersized though. He's just 6 foot. Can't really shoot that well, but he plays with really good energy. He was all defense at Colorado his last year. And so he's got some stuff. When Isaac and I were texting, he said this is the guy he was more interested in because he's got NBA experience and that defense, like a 6-foot guard that can defend really, really well.
Does he have a plus wingspan?
That is a good question.
I want to say somebody told me he has like a 6'6" wingspan, and I believe from a player archetype thing, I want to say this front office tends to which makes me thrilled, like certain elements of athleticism and plus wingspan, where his wingspan is 6 inches longer than his height is. It's the sort of thing that it's like where Dennis Smith Jr. he was 6 foot tall with a 6 foot wingspan. Like these inches, they matter. And so that's a fascinating. He's right. He's probably too small realistically, but I don't know. You never know what they might see.
My thing is, if you're too small and the shot isn't necessarily there, like he was not a great shooter at Colorado, and then in the G League he shot a little bit better. Just But in Summer League, I asked Brendan Clean, because he played with the Suns Summer League team this past year. I asked him about it, and he was like, yeah, he just can't really shoot that well. But he's an interesting guy, plays with really good energy. So I'm interested to see how he works out. I could see him getting a two-way spot, but I could also very well see him with the Texas Legends. The other guy, Mouhamadou Gueye, or Mo Gueye, as everybody calls him, played at Stony Brook for 2 years. He transferred to Pitt last year. And then I texted Nick Faribaugh, who's our Locked On Pitt guy. We have a Locked On Pitt podcast 5 days a week. Go check that out if you're interested in Pitt. Gave me all this. So sit tight as I go through basically a full scouting report on Mo Gueye.
Outstanding.
He's a really nice stretch four. He's about 6'10". He can create for himself off the dribble, though. He's more of a catch and shoot guy on kickouts at this point in his game, but he's also an excellent cutter. He's a super high IQ guy who understands spacing and how to run with it. And on defense, he's a magnet. He was Defensive Player of the Year at Stony Brook before he transferred over to Pitt. He's one of Pitt's best shot blockers ever, and he would erase parts of the court at times because he was there. He averaged over 2 blocks a game at Pitt, which is big in college. He had lots of times he just erased stuff at the rim. He runs really well for his size because he's lanky. That frame means that he has to put on some more muscle. He won't post up anyone at the next level. He's going to get bullied under the basket. But he's a magnetic player on defense who on the other end can pop with the three with solid consistency. He's not going to bang down low in a power game, but he can be the backline defender on ball screens that eliminates a lot. Nick Faribaugh, great stuff on Mo Gueye. And I'm interested in him, but after reading all that, I thought, this is Moses Wright again. This is the same archetype that Moses Wright was. Good shot blocker. Theoretically can step out and hit a three. I think Mo Gueye is a little bit farther developed in his three-point shot than Moses Wright is, but the Mavs seem to have a type. They seem to have a type of player, Kirk, that they want to develop into a player they see playing on their roster in the future.
And I don't know. It's like what I mentioned with measurables a bit earlier, that I don't necessarily think the Mavericks care about height outside of the lineup being big. You know, that's sort of what we're seeing right now. If you're looking at various guesses as to what the Mavericks lineup could be, there's not really anybody under 6'5" in the lineup. And, you know, you do got like McGee's obviously a huge person. He is he's taller than you think once you see him in person. Like you read 7 foot, it's just kind of shocking once you see the man that tall in person. But, you know, the guys that are like 6'8" and super long arms are just, why not is kind of the thought. What can he do? You know, the Mavericks had some interesting luck with another Stony Brook player, Jameel Warney. Remember him? 4 years ago. I was like,
Summer League legend.
Right. So it's just, you know, he obviously didn't make final roster. He didn't have, much of a NBA career, but it's just, I like these sort of shots in the dark, so long as we can all collectively agree to not do the thing where we're demanding that a player who isn't getting playing time get playing time. It's my favorite thing Twitter does, where it's just like, where's Moses Wright? Guys,
you can ask for that every single year and it will always happen. Every single every fan base does this.
It's like, guys, we're fighting for the 4 seed. Moses Wright is not going to play. Okay.
Moses Brown is not going to make the biggest. He's not going to change everything about the Mavs starting lineup.
I love that sort of stuff. Where it's just like, are we that bored? We're winning 3 out of every 4 games.
Yeah. But the 4th game,
that's true.
Could have had Moses Brown there. Could have had Moses Wright. But Mo Gueye is the one I'm more interested in because I think his type of archetype, matches in the NBA. You mentioned Mavs don't care about height. One of the things that people don't really know a lot unless you go see these guys in person is that Dwight Howard was like 6'9". Like Dwight Howard is not 7 foot, 7'2". Like he's not Rudy Gobert's height or anything like that, but he was a great center for a while. And look at some of the centers that just played in the NBA Finals. I mean, Kevon Looney's not 7'2". Robert Williams is like 6'9", 6'10" as well. So as long as you have decent size and you have the wingspan, which Mo Gueye has a plus wingspan, it's like it's 7'2" or 7'3" or something like that. And then also he can hit a 3-point shot. He shot like 36% from 3 on like over 3 a game that he took.
That's pretty good
at Pitt. And his shot looks pretty good from just the highlights that I watched today. But from everything that Nick told me from Locked On Pitt, he has that in his game. He's going to be a catch and shoot guy. He can like close out, or he can attack off of a closeout, get to the rim. He had some really, really nice dunks in his highlight package that I saw from Pitt. But I think and then the defense, the shot blocking to me is just what really stands out. If he can be a shot block defender like that, can also hit the three on the other side, then that's something interesting that you develop, you work on in the Texas Legends. I could see him getting the other two-way spot, be the, they already have Tyler Dorsey as the one two-way spot. Maybe he's the other two-way guy. And then they develop him for a couple years and see if they can turn him into a Robert Williams, a Kevon Looney, a guy like that.
Mm-hmm. Why not? I love these shots in the dark where I'm not the biggest fan of the Tyler Dorsey move for two-way spot because he's 25, 26. Anybody that still has some developmental years in their cycle. Let's just see what they can do given a little bit of opportunity. You never know what can happen in a preseason game. You never know what a coaching staff might latch on to. And, let's say it doesn't work out with the Mavericks and he slides down to the G League or could be a two-way guy. Like there's just all sorts of opportunities. So for right now, I love the thought.
The classic example of the training camp guy that you just didn't expect making it is Salah Mejri, right? Like he was a guy that nobody really expected to make the team. And they cut. Who did they cut? It was the center. They cut him like last minute. It was like Sam. It was Sam Dallenberg is who they cut. It was like old Sam Dallenberg, and they cut him. He had a roster spot, and they cut him and like waived his contract and kept Salah Mejri. So they're like, you never know with stuff like this. Now Salah was a little bit older, and he had played overseas for a while, but you're right. You do never know about some of these training camp guys.
Man, I'd forgotten. Like
Isaac brings that one up every year, and it's always a really good example because
Salah Mejri was just like, for me, he's like a forever Mav, where I will associate him with certain things like he was so testy. I cannot believe I do not remember this, where he was a training camp guy and then he made the roster.
Oh man. Well, it was like 2015. So like
sure.
anything before 2016 or even 2020 now, I feel like our brains just sort of forget, but
that's right.
Kirk, you want to plug anything on Mavs Moneyball or what people should be checking out?
No, we're doing weird stuff over at Mavs Moneyball this time of year because there's only so much content. I just got back from vacation, and while I was out, our co-manager Josh Bowe apparently tweeted out that he was apologizing in advance for Mavs Moneyball comparing, the Mavericks to Halo games and to Batman the Animated Series. So,
stay in your wheelhouse. I did
right.
my youth group metaphor earlier. I've got Avatar references. That's all we got.
Right. We got about 3 weeks until things start really popping. And so we just we should all enjoy ourselves some Eurobasket when we remember that's on and, root for Slovenia and it's I'm looking forward to this season. This was the first, I tell everybody this cause I like whining. I took over Mavs Moneyball March 1st of 2020, which was a really terrible time to take over anything. And this was this just really feels like the first real off season we've had. And I'm disappointed that Brunson walked away, but I'm looking forward to seeing where these guys can either, find a way to take a step back, to take a step forward, or if they figure out something and really, dry, like Luka turns up in MVP shape. Like we have a lot of reasons to be excited about the season.
Oh, for sure. Did you say it was your first healthy off season? Should I take a drink?
It sort of feels like that just because in those days where it's just like the bubble ended, what was it, like mid-September? And then we didn't know when the season was started again, just like Luka. And then that was why it was like all of a sudden basketball's back like 6 weeks later. It was crazy. And then we rolled into this whole same kind of deal. I didn't mean to say healthy off season, but that kind of was the point. It's like, be able to recover a little bit.
So the Kristaps Porzingis first healthy offseason was the phrase that Isaac and I would take a drink every time one of us said it or we heard it in a press conference. And our new one this year is everyone's gonna say Spencer Dinwiddie. This is his first full offseason removed from returning from an ACL. That's gonna be the new phrase.
I like that one. Well, my hottest take is whoever is designing the Slovenian uniforms, the Mavericks need to get that person involved with whoever designed the Mavs uniforms
because he geometric shapes, man.
Yes. Like it just unless he's wearing the Carmelo Anthony like body suit that Melo used to wear, because I don't know, it's the cut of the thing's part of it, but I mean, geez, he looks so good. And I'm like, where can we get that all the time? I mean, obviously, he's a fantastic player, but he literally looks different in a Slovenian uniform.
It's the food overseas, man. The food you can eat as much as you want overseas. I just came back from Paris and London, and you can eat as much as you want. You don't.
So we're the problem. What about
it's our processed food over here, I think, is what it is.
That's right. Well, thanks for having me on, Nick. I appreciate it.
Go check out Mavs Moneyball. Go follow Kirk at Kirk Serious Face. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. Peace out. Boom.